Ever since 2002, with the Mary Kay Letourneau case and the Boston Archdiocese scandal, the media has been more interested in reporting about sex abuse of students in schools, changing societal awareness about what before had thought to be the unthinkable. The way people and the public look at sex abuse in schools has changed demonstrably since then, impacting schools in unexpected ways. Child sex abuse is a larger societal problem, though. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, the jury verdicts can be staggering. The sex abuse problem is extensive and not isolated. Literally thousands of such claims have been brought in the U.S. since 2002. If you think the Catholic Church has a problem, the physical sexual abuse of students in schools is likely more than 100 times the abuse by priests. In this special network TV show of Justice in America, America's K-12 school sex abuse scandals, our investigative team sits down with Morgan Stewart and Saul Wolf at the Manley Stewart Finaldi law firm, who have successfully represented victims of abuse in schools in the highest profile cases. Among them, in 2014, the LA Unified School District agreed to pay a record of $139 million to settle legal claims with 69 parents and 81 students at Miramont Elementary School who accused teacher Mark Berndt of molestation and the school for failing to address complaints of misconduct against Berndt for years. Berndt was sentenced to 25 years in prison. In May of 2016, the Los Angeles Unified School District agreed to pay $88 million to settle sex abuse cases involving 30 children molested by George De La Torre Jr., elementary school teacher Robert Pimentel, and Telfair Avenue elementary teacher Paul Chappelle III. In August 2016, the Redlands Unified School District paid out $6 million to a former Citrus Valley High School student whose teacher, Laura Whitehurst, bore his child. During the past decade, more than 25 victims of childhood sexual abuse have taken RUSD to court in cases that have involved 10 past and present RUSD employees. Morgan Stewart has represented nearly all these victims. In 2018, the Torrance Unified School District agreed to a $31 million settlement with 25 current and former students molested by wrestling coach Thomas Joseph Snyder. Snyder was sentenced in October 2016 to 69 years to life in prison. In 2022, 10 elementary school students who were sexually assaulted by former technology aide Fernando Figueroa received a $13.7 million settlement from the Riverside Unified School District to settle numerous lawsuits. The children ranged in age from 7 to 11 at the time of their abuse. Figueroa was sent to prison in December 2019 for 20 years to life. In 2022, victims of Sun Valley High School wrestling coach Terry Gillard, convicted of molesting 9 children, received a $52 million settlement in a lawsuit that alleged the Los Angeles Unified School District knew of prior sexual misconduct and did nothing about it. In October 2019, Gillard was sentenced to 71 years in prison for sexually assaulting 14 young students. Morgan, Saul, and their firm have earned reputations as unyielding trial lawyers who repeatedly represent individuals and families against big companies and the Goliaths of the world and repeatedly win. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Orange County, California.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Morgan Stewart and Saul Wolf to the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Morgan, tell our audience a little bit about your firm. What do you guys specialize in?
We're probably 95% sexual abuse, mostly focused on children, although some crossover to adults, all civil litigation, plaintiff work, pursuing entities such as school districts, churches, hospital institutions, Olympic organizations. That is pretty much the niche of our practice.
Right, and today we are here talking about a big crisis in America, which is the sexual abuse of children in grades kindergarten through the 12th grade, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have handled a lot of cases over the last 20 plus years, correct? Tell our audience a little bit about some of these cases that come to your mind. We're in Southern California. One of them that comes to my mind is the LA Unified School District. I think there was $139 million. How did that case come to light?
That case came to light because parents came forward and were protesting Mark Berndt, who was the perpetrator, currently behind bars in that case. But what we discovered through our investigation was a significant history going back 20 plus years of his abuse of minors and his inappropriate conduct. I think started in the late 80s, where he was exposing his genitals to minor kids on a field trip. And as you traced it through, you saw a significant history of knowledge by administrators and free passes to let him stay with minors.
A lot of the abuse cases that I've seen you guys covered deal with coaches oftentimes, right? He was a teacher, wasn't he?
He was a teacher.
And they would go on field trips. What was it?
Elementary school, and unfortunately, and I think we talked about this before, essentially disenfranchised, lower income kids, primarily Spanish-speaking households, kids who wouldn't necessarily speak up, or families who wouldn't necessarily speak up.
And how long did it take for the school to take any kind of action?
Oh, it was an ongoing years. It happened over the course of years before they took it seriously enough to address it. And the way that ultimately and now I'm recalling it came out was he took photos to a developer and the developer made a mandated report because he had photos of kids with bugs on them. He had photos of kids blindfolded. He had photos of kids eating cookies with his semen on them.
How old were these children?
10, 11, 12. I mean, I think we had kids all the way down to 7 and 8.
You also had another case in the LA Unified School District, George Dillatore, an elementary school teacher, another teacher. What kind of crazy things was he doing?
That teacher was notorious for touching students over the clothes. He'd pull kids aside to reach under their clothes. He'd have them sit on his lap and fondle them. A similar situation in Miramonte. Young, primarily Spanish-speaking kids who wouldn't necessarily report. He was protected by the principal over many, many years. I mean, for 10 plus years, she ultimately lost her credentials as a result of his behavior and their knowledge. And we have ongoing cases involving Dillatore.
Right. In both these two examples in the LA Unified School District, you mentioned Hispanic kids. Why do you think that Hispanic kids are afraid to tell their parents?
I don't know that they're afraid to tell their parents so much as there's a view, in particularly in the Hispanic community, that you send your kid to school, that's a safe space, and there's a language barrier that we see in many cases. We don't necessarily just see it in LAUSD, but we see it in school districts like Riverside or San Jose, where there's a large non-native population that they have a general distrust of going to law enforcement. They and that's something that's built up. So they don't necessarily have a fear of going to their parents. The fear is going to law enforcement or upsetting the school district, and that concern goes across all those borders of, we can't say anything because we don't feel like we belong in this community, and it attracts predators. It unequivocally, in 20 years of experience, what I've seen is that sort of environment attracts predators.
They go after the vulnerable kids.
Go after the vulnerable kids that won't report.
To piggyback on that, what I've seen in those types of cases as well is that a lot of the kids won't say anything because they've been raised that teacher, I mean, the word in Spanish for teacher is maestro. It's master almost, right? So you can't speak up against your teacher. That is just completely taboo. So these children have this utmost respect for that authority. At least they were raised to believe that their teacher, whatever they're doing, can do no wrong. So there's that divide there that a lot of time prevents them or stops them from coming forward. That's why what I said earlier about the bravery to actually say something takes a lot, especially for the kids from these communities.
Talk to us about the statute of limitations. I remember in the state of California, for example, clergy sex abuse cases, they stopped the statute of limitations to allow people to come forward. When you're talking about a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old child, do you have cases where they were molested 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and the statute of limitations does not prevent you from suing?
Yeah, we had a significant amount of cases that existed during a time period where California was in the process of changing the law, particularly because there was complicated what's called government claim statutes, where you had a limitation on what time period you could make those. The legislature in California has been really progressive in adopting changes to those rules to allow sexual abuse victims, to the point where now the law exists that it's up to age 40. Didn't exist like that
In this state?
In this state only.
Other states are different.
Yeah, every state is pretty much different in how they approach statute of limitations.
I was looking at some of your cases, and one of the school districts that pops out a lot is the Redlands Unified School District. Seem to be a lot of cases there. Why is that?
You had a permissive administration that allowed it to happen. You had higher pay and the knowledge that if you look at Redlands as a microcosm, it's basically the jewel of the Inland Empire in California. It's the school district where everybody gravitates to. It's got higher pay, it's got nicer facilities, but it also had the underlying knowledge of an administration that allowed perpetrators to operate freely. If you look at one school in that district, it had probably a dozen perpetrators in the course of a 10-year period. The principal that started that school, a woman named Marilyn Kimple, she just had her credentials revoked last August. She's in her 80s, but nonetheless, the state administration took action against her for failing to rectify one of the earliest perpetrators there. And that runs across not only the spectrum of the entire district, but you have an administrator that's currently on leave for an investigation who was found during an investigation involving Laura Whitehurst to be destroying documents. Testimony came out from Redlands Police Department. They searched the search warrant because the district was not cooperating, and found her in the course of destroying documents related to that teacher. That's just two examples of, short examples of perpetrators in that district. It is probably, I would rank it up there amongst the worst districts in terms of student safety in the world.
Let me ask you, you mentioned this is the district in the Inland Empire that everybody gravitates toward because they get paid a lot of money or more than other places. What about the students' test scores? Does that reflect that they have high test scores there?
I believe Redlands is one of the best scoring districts in the area. I mean, and that's one of the reasons, like Morgan said, that a lot of students gravitate, or a lot of families gravitate towards that area. They have a good reputation educationally. Right. However, as we've seen over and over and over again, the dark side of that district is much more worrisome than people realize. And now it's finally, over the course of 10 years, I think Morgan's been litigating against Redlands Unified School District that the Department of Justice has done a full-blown investigation into that district, which is, in our mind, a big step towards trying to clean it up because it's long overdue.
Okay, now, when you're speaking about the dark side, insurance companies are not stupid. When they see a lot of these cases happening, they ultimately have to pay for some of these cases, don't they? So have they written into their policies exclusion clauses which will protect them so they don't have to lay out the money?
Yeah, so in the early 90s, the school districts, and we're going back before sexual abuse, the school districts realized they couldn't get traditional insurance because of the volume of claims and the risk to claim. So they went to what's called a JPA system, by and large, majority of them, joint powers associations, which is essentially risk pooling. So it's not traditional insurance in the sense it's a contract-based system.
So in other words, if the Redlands Unified School District is ended up getting a lot of verdicts against them or settlements, the San Diego school district has to pay for that too.
Yeah, within bounds that they're choosing which JPA they're in. So, for example, Redlands gets hit, San Bernardino City Unified might need to kick in money, or Colton, surrounding school districts.
And how do they feel about that?
They're not happy about it. Redlands is one of the.
What are they doing about it?
They're sucking it up because they don't have any royal choice. What they should be doing is pushing corrective measures amongst school districts that are notoriously bad. Redlands got a higher risk rating because of Whitehurst, Kirkland, Lopez, all those perpetrators who resulted in large settlements and risks to the district caused Redlands' risk profile to go up substantially, which means they're getting charged more in the JPA. But what they're missing from the equation is all these school districts need to get together and figure out, if you've got a problem, it's my problem also, and we're gonna fix this problem. They're so busy in the method of burying and hiding the sexual abuses in the district. You look at Colton, for example. Colton's a great example. They're not understanding that the root of the problem is where they need to aim it at. They're just placing big Band-Aids on it.
What does it say?
It says you would rather adopt what is the status quo, continue to get sued, continue to fail children and put them at risk, than to ever meet with the person who could tell you what is going on in your district and why it's a problem.
Is there, in a lot of professions, when you get a license to get a teacher credential, right? There's no checkup annually on any of the conduct or behavior of these teachers on a regular basis, is there?
There's ongoing criminal, if someone gets picked up for a crime and actually convicted, then there's a ding that shows up in their record, and then the CTC, the Commission on Teaching Credentialing, gets wind of that and it makes its way to the district. However, along the same lines, once a teacher's tenured, especially, the amount of supervision that is provided to that teacher from the local agency, the school district, in our experience, is almost nil. And so, yeah, these teachers have free reign, and I'm not even talking about teachers. I mean, even coaches, and you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
In my experience, coaches, teachers' assistants, those who don't have to go through the credentialing process, are the bulk of our claims that we see, because it's the path of least resistance for these individuals who want access to kids to get that access. All they need to do, really, in some instances, is have a high school diploma, and a school district gives them access to kids and provides zero supervision.
Anything else you want to say to the audience? Like, for example, if you have a case, if you have something, what should they do? First thing.
First thing I would tell them is, if you're willing to talk to someone and are at the point of talking to someone from a mental health standpoint, getting therapy and being able to talk through that is a really big step. And once they have the courage to talk to anyone about it, you know, we are fortunate in our firm to not only have, you know, lawyers who are trauma informed, but we also have people on staff who answer a lot of the phone calls for us, who are not only trauma informed, but have worked directly with survivors for years.
Well, I want to thank both of you for the work you do, for being on the show, and we'll see you again. Thank you.
It's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.